right. Good evening. I am Rosemarie Reyes. Today I'll be discussing about managing your hub economy, which is written by Marco Iansiti and Karim Lakhani. Right. So we see that indications that when you take on this forming with a limited number of corporations occupying key roles. So this digital superpowers are companies like Alibaba, Alphabet, Google, Amazon, Apple, Baidu. Baidu is a dominant internet search engine company in China. We also have Facebook, Microsoft, and Tencent, another China-based internet and technology company that develops innovative products and services. So the problems that we have with the hub economy is that the global economy is clustering around the few digital superpowers. So as mentioned earlier, the industry is actually being dominated by the few technology players, as we've seen earlier, the likes of Google and Facebook. Although they're providing genuine benefit to the customers, these corporations are also grabbing a disproportionate and growing piece of the value that shapes our collective economic. So the technologies that were supposed to democratize business are instead threatening to monopolize it. There's really a tendency for them to monopolize all the customers in that industry. So beyond controlling specific markets, these are corporations develop and manage critical linkages in the networks that saturate our economy. As an example, actually Google create competitive bottlenecks in such a way that they're leveraging on the billions of customer mobile consumers, the information of all their customers, and they don't only offer the products and services, but they're also leveraging on the data by influencing the flow of information, the data collected from these customers. Another use case there is Alibaba and Amazon. So they're not only venturing on the retail space using their marketplaces, but they're able to connect a vast number of users with a large number of retailers and manufacturers. They're actually good at creating an ecosystem for everyone to, of course, connect all the users with the retailers and manufacturers. Lastly, we have WeChat. Similarly with Google, they also have access to the billion of records of all their global users, which is actually their critical source of consumer access for their businesses. So they're not only leveraging and offering online banking, entertainment, transportation, and other services, but they also use this information to attract the other players in that industry to offer their products and services through them. So WeChat has a billion global users. So all of them are gaining access to those billions of customers. And in fact, they're looking at expanding outside of China. So the hub firms actually don't compete in a traditional fashion. So they don't just focus on developing good products, but they're actually network ready in the sense that they're leveraging on the data of their customers. So they leverage on network-based assets that have previously scaled in one environment to join another industry and re-architect its competitive structure, converting it from product-driven to network-driven. So in the case of Ag Financial, they leverage also on Alibaba's big user base. So Alibaba is in for Ant Financial specifically is only 3 years old, but they already have almost half a billion or 500 million users, and they plan to expand beyond China. So Google automotive strategy doesn't only focus on improving the automotive industry, but they also leverage on technologies and data advantage to change the structure of the entire automotive industry. So most companies, sadly, they will not all be farms, but all of them will have to quickly respond to the rising concentration of the power. So these are the tech giants that I showed earlier. So the other players in the industry to be able to remain competitive, they have to use their assets and capabilities differently. They need to transform their core businesses. They need to develop new revenue opportunities and identify areas that can be defended from encroaching hub firms and other rushing in from previously disconnected economic sectors. In fact, one notable example there is the company Xfinity. So it's an internet, TV, and home phone service provider for consumers owned by Comcast. Comcast, on the other hand, owns naman NBC Universal. In the Philippine setting, I think we have somewhat similar to this, which is Signal. So they're trying to have that media. They're also offering internet, but they don't have the phone or landline capability. Another example is Bayantel, when they ventured into landline and internet space. So, so as Mark Zuckerberg articulated in his Harvard commencement address in 2017, we have a level of wealth inequality that hurts everyone. So even if he is already the owner of a tech giant, he can see the level of inequality across all the different facets of the entire ecosystem. So you're saying that business as usual is not a good option. So there were actually public concerns when during the election in the US, when they said that the Facebook and Twitter played a big part in skewing the US presidential election. So because of their platforms, they were able to influence the votes of the people. So another thing that they're raising is that Google had challenges previously with the global regulatory body. So they're under dispute at that time. And then there are also criticisms of Uber's culture and operating policies. In fact, there were challenges that's why they had to close their operations in the Philippines. And then lastly, as mentioned by Pivi earlier, there were also concerns about Airbnb, where they're saying that the rental practices are actually racially discriminatory in such a way that they're not offering services to Black or African Americans. And they're saying that it's actually harmful to municipal housing stocks, rent, and pricing. So what's good about it is that we as part of this ecosystem, we are able to raise all our concerns so that this tech giants will be able to address all the concerns about these things, specifically on regulatory and some of their operations that will have to be fixed. Okay, so we're seeing that the real opportunity here is that there's actually for hub firms, they should be able to truly lead our economy. In fact, they're shaping how our economy is transforming in such a way that they should be able to create effective ways to share economic value, manage collective risks, and sustain the networks and communities that we all actually depend on. So they're also saying that it will require the hubs to fully consider the long-term societal impact of all their decisions, to prioritize their ethical responsibilities to all large economic ecosystems that increasingly resolve around them. So in essence, since they're the big players, they're the ones that are supposed to really address all this the impacts of it, the risks of all this, and they play a big role in the ethical responsibility to the entire ecosystem. Okay, so as mentioned earlier, there were also public concerns that were raised, and they're saying that in the case of fake news, Facebook already hired 1,000 of dedicated employees to shut down tens and thousands of phony accounts. They worked with good sources to identify untrue claims and offered guides for spotting false information. In fact, very recently, Facebook joined the bandwagon in paid accounts. So in order for the account to be validated, it had to be paid similar to that of the Twitter. And then for Google, on the other hand, the YouTube division, Google's YouTube division, they invested in engineering artificial intelligence in new resources and actually work together with NGOs to ensure that videos promoting terrorism are actually taken down promptly. A lot of videos concerning terrorism are being spread, but they're quick in responding by ensuring that resources are in place to combat these concerns. Okay, now let's talk about the domino effect. So the emergence of economic hubs is rooted in the three principles of digitization and network theory. So the first principle that was mentioned here is about Moore's law, which states that computer processing power will double approximately every 2 years. So imagine when we were discussing in our OS and network to the power of the processing power of computers. So computers are actually very powerful in the sense that this improvements in the technology will actually drive the augmentation and replacement of human activity with digital tools. So if we have seen ChatGPT, AI, this actually poses concerns to some of the technical writers because you can now talk to things like ChatGPT to create stuff for you. And second principle is about Metcalfe's law, which involves connectivity. So most of the computing devices today have built-in network connectivity that allows them to communicate with one another. So modern technology enables the sharing of information at near zero marginal cost, and digital networks are spreading rapidly. So the law states that a network's value increases with the number of nodes or users, the dynamic we think of as network effects. So in this case, like what Sir Chippy has been saying before, data is gold, and the number of nodes and the number of users are actually very important for this tech giants because they're leveraging on the data of these users. So this is actually what we call the network effect. And lastly, the third principle is called Albert Laszlo Barabasi model. So not Barabas, but Barabasi model. So this is the notion that digital network formation naturally leads to the emergence of positive feedback loops that create increasingly important, highly connected hubs. So because digital networks carry more and more economic transactions, the power of economic hubs, which connect consumers, firms, and even industries to one another expands. So we see that in this ecosystem, it's actually growing because there's actually network of consumers and suppliers and other retail providers where we leverage on each services, and these suppliers or this commercial establishments are leveraging the data of the users. And then once the hub is highly connected in one sector of the economy, it will enjoy a crucial advantage as it begins to connect to a new sector. So sometimes these companies are diversifying their operations in such a way that Google used to be a tech company is now also investing into other spaces like education, automobile, or transportation. So they're also venturing into other things. So with the introduction of iOS and Android, the industry began to tip away from its hardware centricity to network structure centered on the multi-sided platforms. In fact, with the presence of iOS and Android, there are so many mobile phone providers became out of business. So in the case of Motorola, Nokia, BlackBerry, they became out of business because they were not able to diversify and adapt with the digital transformation efforts. Music is also tipped to Apple, Google, and Spotify. So before, gone are the days when we have to go to a record store to buy music and buy albums. Now, music is easily accessible through Apple, Google, and Spotify. So also, Alibaba and Amazon are gaining more share in the retail space. Before we would really need to go to stores or groceries, but the availability of this platforms actually paved the way for the ease during the pandemic because we were able to buy groceries online. And Amazon actually acquired Whole Foods, the grocery chain in the US. And then Currently, the growing power of messaging and communication platforms are actually posing a threat to telecom service providers. So in our case currently, instead of using our phones to call and text, we would always use, and sometimes if there's a network, we would use Facebook and chat to communicate. And similarly, on-premise computer and software offerings are actually using ground to cloud services of Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and Alibaba. So before we would need on-premise computers to make this hardwares available, but because of the presence of these cloud services, the likes of Fujitsu and other um, companies producing hardware actually getting that threat of course, the demise of their operations. In the case of financial services, the big players now are the likes of Ant, Paytime, Angelico, and Broadcom. So in the Philippines, we have below GCash, which is a partnership between Mint and also Alibaba, um, or Ant Financial to actually have presence. They used to be just a mobile wallet, but now they expanded their services into a full financial service where they had access to banks. You're saying it's the branchless banking, and they're also offering other services like bill payment, and they're now offering insurances as well in that platform. So in the space of home entertainment, we know that Apple, Amazon, Google, and Netflix are actually the big key players, or they're the ones dominating this space. So they're actually uh, in the book, they're saying that aside from the healthcare, aside from the other um, offerings, the firms that are likely to emerge next are in healthcare, industrial products, and agriculture. But this time we will be discussing the automotive sector. So in the US, they're actually it's the automotive sector is actually a um big operation in such a way that they're providing 70 million jobs across the US, and it generates almost close to $1 trillion in sales annually. So malaki talaga yung operations ng car sales in the US. So with the presence of this digital transformations, cars are now connected to digital networks, and they're essentially becoming rolling information and transaction nodes. Because before, we only have access to these applications through our phones, but this time, this car companies are now working with the likes of Amazon and Apple and Google to automate the car systems. So this connectivity is reshaping the structure of the automotive industry. So the new source of value is actually emerging in such a way that connection to consumers in transit. So they're saying that in the future, because of some collaborations between the big giant car corporations, there will come a time when people will no longer be driving cars. So they're just going to be behind the wheel. And what they're more worried about is the driving experience. So they're no longer going to care about the driving experience, but more focused on the apps and services that are being offered by the automobiles. So this our teachers will be now focused on software networks, and then eventually this will be the automakers control will be now um, more less on the price premiums, because definitely it will go down because the focus of this consumers or the owners of the company, the buy of the cars are now focused on software networks. And then the transformation will also attend a range of connected sectors in such a way that it will also impact insurance, automotive repairs and maintenance, road construction, law enforcement, and infrastructure. So because of the changes in the digital technology, all these things will also have an impact in such a way that regulators will have to revisit all these policies and guidelines. So like in the Philippines, with the presence of hybrid cars, they're actually changing some of the regulations in such a way that this source will be exempted from color coding. So they also have to revisit some of the other facets of the disconnected sectors. So in the connected car ecosystem, so there are actually three main players that we're looking at. So we have Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and OpenCar. They're actually the ones dominating the market for the integrated smartphone functionality in vehicles. So the expensive cars like a Tesla, Venue would have this applications installed or already in place in the dashboards of the car. So they actually create a powerful bottleneck of assets because they have scores of the supply chain partners, the ones on the left. And then there are also stakeholders on the right, which comprises of apps, insurance companies. So they're creating a big ecosystem of um, different companies that has a play on the consumers. So they have a direct reach to consumers through this ecosystem. And then some companies are actually exploring a pay-per-use model for their cars and even acquiring or launching or partnering with car as a service providers. In fact, in the US, General Motors actually invested $500 million in the ride-sharing service Tablet. So Lakhani lives in the Philippines. We used to have Uber, but we're now stuck with just Grab. So the luxury division of GM is now also offering monthly car subscription service. Maybe this is for their high-end customers. Also, Daimler, the company behind Mercedes-Benz, also launched a car sharing business called Car2Go. So imagine if you're on a date and you want to impress your date, you just book one car just for that day. And then there are also several manufacturers that also invested into research into driverless vehicles and partnered with external providers to look into the visibility of having a driverless. We'll see maybe next time, just like the Jetsons, we no longer need to drive cars. So automakers also need to play as the hubs by participating in the platform competition that will determine value capture in the sector. In fact, we see some of these companies acquiring another company to strengthen their proposition. So in this case, OpenCar acquired InRix, which is a traditional auto supplier. And then what's good about it is that OpenCar's framework is fully controlled by the car manufacturer. So they enable the car manufacturers to tweak it and to make it customized to fit their brand. And then other automotive companies also joined. They used to be fierce rivals, but they actually collaborated and joined together. One example is here. Uh, it has roots in NAVTech, and then later it was initially bought by Nokia, and later it was acquired by Volkswagen, BMW, and Daimler. So for traditional products and services, um, actually businesses, when they're gaining additional customers, they don't increase the economic value as much. So at some point, even if they have a lot of number of users or customers, their value proposition actually is just plateauing or not even increasing. However, with the many platforms or digital platforms with the likes of Amazon, Facebook, they're becoming more valuable as more people and companies use them. And because of it, um, the infrastructure that they have, the ecosystem that they created, they were able to connect a lot of people and create network effects. So increasing returns to scale with the local advertising platforms, that while it's getting better and better, more users track more and more ads. So I'm sure you have experienced this whenever you would use your social media apps. When you look at something, it's going to suggest more ads similar to that product that you have initially checked. And as the number of ads increases, so does the ability to target to the ads to the users, making individual ads more valuable. So with these great algorithms that they have employed in their sites, they were able to actually create a direct advertising, making sure that more appropriate products are being offered to specific users. And then advertising software platforms such as Windows, Linux, Android, and iOS, which exceeded increasing returns to scale, actually are growing value to consumers as the number of available apps are actually increasing. And then the value to app developers rises as the number of consumers rises. So in this ecosystem, a lot of players are actually growing in such a way that if there are a great number of users, there will be more app developers offering their applications, and then this ecosystem are actually feeding all the players in that ecosystem. The more consumers, the greater the incentive for developers to build apps, and the more apps there are, the more motivated consumers to use their digital devices. In fact, just similar to the BlackBerry story, they were not able to create a good platform or an ecosystem, which led to their demise. That's why we don't have BlackBerries anymore. Okay, so how firms often compete against one another. So we have seen, how Microsoft, Facebook, and the others are actually competing with one another. In fact, these companies to strengthen their proposition, they're investing in buying new companies to invest, like specifically for Microsoft, they invested in augmented reality to create a new cloud and counterbalance the power that Google and Apple wield in the mobile space. So this is similar with Facebook after it acquired Oculus to force a similar structural shift in the emerging field of virtual reality. So both Microsoft and Facebook are actually now into the VR and the augmented reality space. In the smart home arena, Google, Apple, Microsoft, and Samsung attempt to reduce Amazon's early lead in the voice-active home technology. So they're also creating their own apps for the home technology for the IoT devices. And then with foresight and investment, traditional firms can resist by becoming hubs themselves. So we know of GE, this is an appliance company. Now they're growing into the Internet of Things space. So they now invested in the Predix platform to create GE Digital so that they can compete in the other IoT device providers. And then Vodafone and Verizon actually followed suit by developing their own IoT platform. So they're not only telecoms companies, but now they're venturing into another space to make sure that their business is still running and they're still remaining relevant. So firms can also shape competition by investing to ensure that there are multiple hubs in each sector and even influencing which ones win. So in the case of Deutsche Telekom, they partnered with Microsoft Azure for their cloud computing in Central Europe. So instead of going for Amazon Web Services, they partnered with Microsoft. So the value generated by networks will change as firms compete, innovate, and respond to community and regulatory pressure. So we have seen these alliances between companies to make their propositions better and to strengthen the capabilities of their companies as well. And then multi-homing is a practice that enables participants of one hub's ecosystem to easily join another. This actually can significantly mitigate the rise of hub power. So in the case of drivers and passengers, they routinely multi-home across different ride-sharing platforms to check prices. In the Philippines before, we would do this with the presence of Uber and Grab at the time, but now maybe for the motorcycle riders, they can do multi-homing by switching between Joyride or Grab or Angkas. But in the US, they can check prices between Uber, Lyft, and Fasten, just to check which is offering the best deal. This is not actually only for consumers, but also the drivers as well, to see which has the best deal. And then retailers are starting to multi-home across payment systems, supporting multiple solutions, such as Apple Pay, Google Wallet, and Samsung Pay. So we have seen in the Philippines also accepting several wallets. So we don't have Apple Pay, Google One, or Bayad in GCash, like we could fit to a single player, preserving competition and diffusing value capital on multiple hubs, and encourage the formation of new hubs that were being held hostage by one dominant player. So this is actually one way to make sure that there is a wireless speaker. Music system seamlessly integrates with many music, Amazon Music Unlimited, Google Play, Pandora, Spotify, and Tidal. So the downside to just partnering with just one, um, you're actually not diversifying. So there's actually a risk of eventually being no longer relevant. So collective action can restructure economic networks, shape value creation, and capture and ease competitive bottlenecks. In fact, again, this reminds me of our OS and networking subject where in the 90s, open source community actually organized to compete against Microsoft Windows. So companies, hardware companies like IBM and Hewlett Packard supported this and reinforce the use of Linux operating system by making sure that their hardware will run Linux operating system. And then later, this was reinforced by Google and Facebook. Today, Linux are firmly established in enterprises, consumer devices, and cloud computing. So they're actually trying to remove the monopoly in that sense by making sure that there's presence of Linux in that space. And then Mozilla's open source community and its Firefox browser broke Microsoft's grip on navigating the internet. So we have a lot of options in terms of browsers. So aside from Internet Explorer from Microsoft, we also have Google Chrome, and then there's Mozilla, which is an open source community which offers Firefox browser, and even Apple, which is very notorious for their proprietary operating system. And for the infamous iPhone jailbreaking phrase demonstrated both the extraordinary. So when you think of jailbreaking, you actually think of Green Hills. This is only opened and not locked in specific tab. So the ethics of network leadership, so the responsibility for sustaining our digital economy rests partly with the same leaders who are poised to control it. And then by developing such central positions of power and influence, health firms have become de facto stewards of the long-term health of our economy. And then these leaders actually need to realize that their organization are analogous to keystone species and biological ecosystem, playing a critical role in maintaining their surroundings. And then there's actually a big um, importance on ensuring that they're building and maintaining a healthy ecosystem, which will be in the best interest of our companies. So Amazon and Alibaba, they claim millions of marketplace sellers and they profit from every transaction for each merchant. Similarly, Google and Apple earn billions as well in revenue from the third-party apps that run on their platforms. So this both providing programming frameworks, software tools, and opportunities and business models that enable developers to grow their businesses. So in this scenario, everybody wins. So the developers can create more apps to cater to their customers. Um, Google and Apple are actually earning more by making sure that their platforms are available for this developer communities. And of course, you leveraging on the users that are part of this community. Then preserving the strength and productivity of complementary communities should be fundamental part of any firm strategies. So if these hubs do not promote the health and sustainability of many firms and individuals and their networks, other forces will undoubtedly step in. And then governments and regulators will increasingly act to encourage competition, so protect consumer welfare and foster economic stability, similar to the challenges of Google that they're facing in the US, where regulators are concerned about the dominance of its search advertising business and its unregulated. And then lastly, the centralizing forces of digitization is not going to slow down anytime soon. So because of the digitization and the rapid digital transformation efforts, this hub firms are actually going to become more powerful, and the emergence of these hubs are always going to be underway, and the threats to global economic well-being are unmistakable. And then lastly, the actors in the economy, particularly to the hub firms themselves, should work to sustain the entire ecosystem and observe new principles for both strategic and ethical reasons. Otherwise, we are all in serious trouble. That's all. Thank you.